Make sure your attendance check is open. Make sure I get your green checks. All right, sorry, we're gonna go ahead and move on really quickly because we just ran out of a bunch of time. Green checks, looking good. All right, so let's go ahead. What I send what? Oh no, it doesn't. Sorry, Lolo. It only sends if I'm actually in here. All right, so if you had something you wanted to tell me, make sure you resend it. All right, cool. So we are on day 6 out of 45 of our weekly schedule here. Taking a look today, we are going to be doing our analysis. Keep in mind tomorrow you do have notes due. So even though we don't have class tomorrow, you still have an assignment. So please make sure you do tomorrow's assignment while watching tomorrow's recording. Go ahead and give me a lightning bolt if that makes sense. Lightning bolt if that makes sense. So tomorrow you do need to make sure that you still do the assignment. Perfect. Okay. Awesome. So taking a look here, we can see that we have our grade breakdown. Remember, Star 360 is 10% of your grade. I am zeroing it out this Friday. All of your teachers will be zeroing it out this Friday, so make sure you get it done, especially because next week our schedule changes. So if you do well on Star 360, your schedule will have less live sessions. If you do poorly on it, you'll have the maximum amount of sessions required and the maximum amount of attendance required. So make sure you do your best on it. Make sure you go through it at your own pace and try your best. Now, remember, analyses, labs, and exams are 65% of your grade. And starting today, we will now have a second assignment in this category. So we already have the 1D lab in there. Now we're going to have the 2B analysis. All right. So together, those are going to make up 65% of your grade, which means you cannot be passing my class unless you get them done. Go ahead and give me a clock if that makes sense. Clock if that makes sense. You have to make sure you get both of these done. Love it. Thank you. All right. So we have been talking all about states of matter, which is how like liquids, gases, and solids. And we've also talked about how they can change phases from one to another. Today, we're going to go ahead and keep on talking about that with our analysis. Tomorrow, we will be taking a look at thermodynamics, which is how heat moves. All right. So what I need you to do right now is I need you to open up your analysis. I'm going to go ahead and send that link out. And then I'm going to clear out your old green checks. Give me new green checks, please, once you have that open, or you are ready to take pictures or screenshots. Once it's open, or you're ready to take pictures or screenshots. Green checks, everyone. Awesome. All right, have about 8 of them, 10 or 42 of you. Got 15 green checks so far. So waiting on over half of you. Again, open it up, give me a green check, or tell me that you're ready to take pictures by giving me a green check. Looking good. Thank you to the 18 of you, 20 of you. Awesome. Waiting on Amanda, Antonio, Benjamin, Keziah, Christian, Trey, Dajane. Thank you, Diego. Waiting on Erwin, Aqua, Isaiah. Waiting on Jacqueline, Kayla, Kier, Lolo, green checks. MJ, Michael, Paulina, Raby, and Tatiana, green checks once we have our analysis open. Perfect. Okay, everyone. So before we go ahead and start our analysis, we want to go ahead. Okay, no worries, Lolo. We want to go ahead and do a little bit of background information. So what we're going to talk about is temperature today and how it's related to freezing. So remember that when you talk about the temperature outside, what scale are you using? So when you say, oh, it's 72 degrees out, what scale are we using? What's the units that you would say? Tell me in the chat box. It's 72 degrees what? Yes, F for Fahrenheit, right? So 72 degrees Fahrenheit. That is what we use in the US, right? Now, the thing is, Fahrenheit is a very kind of arbitrary, which means random kind of scale because it's sort of based off of how temperature feels to humans, right? So 0 degrees Fahrenheit feels really cold for us. And then 100 degrees Fahrenheit feels really hot for us, right? But that's entirely random, right? It's just a random scale that someone made up. Now, on the other hand, Celsius, which is the scale that we use in science class, has a little bit more of like a reason for the way that it is. Because what it is that the freezing point of water, that's what we call 0 degrees Celsius. And the boiling point of water, that's what we call 100 degrees Celsius. So it makes a little bit more sense. It's a little bit more even, as well as like it just makes sense based on water, okay? Which is kind of crazy because let's go ahead and take a look at this website right here. I'm going to share this with you. Hopefully it still works. All right, so take a look here at 0 degrees Celsius. Okay, so 0 degrees Celsius is how cold for us. Tell me in the chat box. 0 degrees Celsius is how cold for us. Take a look at the Fahrenheit box, the green side. Yeah, it's 32 degrees Fahrenheit for us. So that's when it begins snowing, right? But this is cold, but is it like really, really, really cold? Like, tell me in the chat box. 32 degrees Fahrenheit, is it cold, but like really cold? Yes or no? No, like it's cold and it's a little uncomfortable, but it's not unbearable, right? It's right when it begins to snow, which is not terrible weather, right? Thumbs up if that makes sense. So again, 0 degrees Celsius is very specific because it's the freezing point of water, whereas 32 degrees Fahrenheit for us is just like, it's kind of cold, right? Now, if you go even colder though, let's say we go down to like 0 degrees Fahrenheit, that feels very cold for us, right? So that's like fun in the snow, but that's actually negative 18 degrees Celsius. Right? Yeah, going even colder, right? Negative 22 degrees Fahrenheit is negative 30 degrees Celsius, right? So it gets really, really cold down here. Now, if we go the other way, right, let's imagine that it's about 50 degrees for us. So how does 50 degrees feel for us? Tell me on the chat box. Is that bad? Is it good? How does 50 degrees feel for us? Is it okay? Not terrible? Yeah, it's good, right? It's kind of cool, right? You kind of need a jacket, but it's not terrible. Now, this is actually what we call 10 degrees in Celsius. So 10 degrees, if you were to ask someone in Europe, like, what's the temperature out? And they said 10 degrees, you would be shocked, but really it just means about 50 degrees in Fahrenheit. Okay, go ahead and give me a cloud if that makes sense. All right, so 10 degrees Celsius has a totally different meaning to other people, right? Cool. Now, if we go up to about room temperature for us, room temperature is about 70-ish degrees for us. How cold is that in Celsius? So room temperature for us is about 72 degrees Fahrenheit. How cold is that or what is that in Celsius? Take a look at the purple box. Yeah, it's 22 degrees. So again, if you are out in Europe and you're like, oh, what's the temperature? Someone might be like, oh, it's 22 out right now. That might scare you, but in reality, 22 degrees Celsius is actually a decent day. Right, now let's keep on going, up, up, up. 100 degrees Fahrenheit, 96 degrees, that's a warm day. That's only about 35 degrees, 36 degrees in Celsius. Keep on going. Now we're in the desert temperatures. Now we're at hot coffee, all the way up to 100 degrees Celsius. So 100 degrees Celsius is the same as 212 degrees Fahrenheit, which would be unbearable for humans, right? So that's why when we talk about the US temperature scale from 0 to 100, that goes from like really cold for humans to really hot for humans. But the Celsius scale has to do with water, right? So the Celsius scale is a little bit different because it has to do with water. This is when water boils. Go ahead, give me a thumbs up, everyone, if that makes sense. Thumbs up if that makes sense of how the Celsius and the Fahrenheit scales are related to each other. Perfect. Okay, so jumping back into it, why we need to know that today is because your article that you are going to be analyzing today has to do with freezing water. So I just want to make sure that you understand what terms we use in science class when we talk about freezing water. So let's jump into this. I'm going to go ahead and explain how you're going to do your analysis today. So what you will be doing is what I want you to do is for each section, there are 4 of them. So 4 questions you're going to be, four sections you're going to be answering. For each section, I do want you to read it out loud to yourself. Okay, to begin to familiarize yourself with the passage. Now, I know you might be thinking, reading out loud to myself is super awkward, Mrs. Larkin. And I agree, it's really awkward. However, it is really good practice because studies have shown that the more you read, the more intelligent you get, because intelligence is not fixed, right? It's not that, oh, you're a smart person or, oh, you're a dumb person. It's that the more that you practice, the more intelligent you get. All right, go ahead and give me a, let's see here. Give me a guy with sunglasses, if that makes sense. Give me a cool guy, if that makes sense. All right. So the more you practice, the more intelligent you get. So you really want to practice reading, and the more that you read, the more intelligent you get. It's shown this for students, for little kids, for adults. The more you read, the more intelligent you get. So the first time you go through it, read it out loud to yourself. Again, it's awkward, but do it, right? It doesn't have to be loud. You can read it quietly, but read it out loud. Then the second time you go through, you're going to actually look for the information you need. So you should always go through things that you're trying to analyze twice, right? The first time you should read it just to kind of understand the overall idea, the overall picture. The second time you get into the details and you look for what you need. Okay, so for each section, you're going to be doing 3 things, okay? The first thing you're going to be doing is you're going to be identifying words and defining them. So what you need to do is you're going to identify 3 or more unknown words, okay, or class vocab words, or important words. Okay, so it can be any of those, but you should prioritize unknown words. So if there's a word that you literally don't know, that should be the first one that you identify, because it's going to be really important that you understand what that word is in order to understand the entire paragraph. Okay, go ahead, give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, so 3 or more, which means you can do 3 words, 4 words, 5 words, but don't just do 2, don't just do 1. You have to get at least 3 or more. Okay, again, prioritizing unknown words. Now, then what you're going to do is you're going to Google all of those words to define them. So I know a lot of times in my class, I'm like, don't use Google, because you don't need to in my class. You should be able to get most stuff from what we're doing in class. But in this case, you are allowed to Google. Okay? No, Lolo, it doesn't help your grade, but it does help your understanding, right? It's not always about the grade, right? Sometimes it's about just making sure you really understand it. That way you do well on the other parts of this, right? So if there are so many words that you can't understand the entire paragraph, that's something that you want to make sure you're beginning to understand, okay? Now, so what you're going to do is you are going to actually use Google to get definitions, and you can copy these definitions, right? So for this part, I'm totally fine. You can copy definitions from Google, okay? Because this is a real life skill, okay? How many of you have ever seen a word in a TV show or in something you're reading or in everyday life? You've heard a word and then you were like, I don't know what that means, and you've looked it up on your phone. How many of you have done that? I do that all the time. I do it at least once a day where I'm like, that's a word that I don't know. Oftentimes because a student says something and I'm like, I don't know what they're saying right now. It's like a foreign language. Yes, right? All right, so this is a life skill. Even if it's like something silly, like someone says YOLO and you don't know what YOLO means. Hopefully you guys all know what YOLO means. But if someone says that, right, you can Google it and you can figure out what it means. Or it can also be good when you're talking about really in like scientific things, right? There are a lot of scientific words, right, that we might not know. And so we need to learn how to Google them to begin to understand them. So yeah, Z, Aqua, if you're not looking up words, you need to start looking up words, because otherwise you're going through life not knowing a lot of things, right? So we want to make sure that we're looking up words we do not know, okay? So we're going to use Google to define all of these. And the important thing here is I want you to use simple definitions. So when you go to Google, there's like 100 definitions that you can find by going to different websites, but don't give me the really complex definition that is like a college level and you don't understand what it actually means. Okay. So instead, right? Please be appropriate in my class, Aqua. Yeah, so instead, what you're going to do is you're going to find definitions that are simple, right? So if you were trying to explain it to your little cousin, use that definition, okay? You should not use Urban Dictionary for scientific principles, please. You can use that for everyday life, though, if you hear a term you don't understand. All right, go ahead, give me a lightning bolt if that makes sense. Actually, give me a book. Give me a book if that makes sense, okay? So use definitions that you could use to explain to a little cousin. Pretend you're trying to explain it to a little cousin. Perfect. Now, for each section, then you're going to list 3 important quick points, and you'll take these directly from the passage. So take the 3 exact like definitions from the passage, exact points from the passage that you want, that you think are important to understanding what this passage means, what this section means, okay? So again, you can copy these ones directly from the passage. Okay, so you can copy directly from the section, okay? Yeah, so this is not bad, guys, because I know it seems like a lot, but a lot of this is just copying to make sure you really understand what's going on in the paragraph, okay? Then from there, all you need to do is you're going to take all that information that you just analyzed, right? You just talked about words, you just talked about main points, and then all you need to do is you need to summarize it. So you're going to summarize it into 1 to 2 sentences, in your own words, using complete sentences with correct grammar. So this one right here, I know, Paulina, my connection today is terrible too. I think it's Blackboard. Blackboard's having issues today. But taking a look here, when I say this is the most important part, right? So this right here, everything leads up to this last point, the summary, right? So this is the most important. This is the most important. And you need to make sure that you're not copying. So this one, you're not copying stuff from the internet. You're not copying stuff from the section. Instead, you're putting it into your own words. So it's like if you took this entire paragraph of information, and again, you're trying to explain it to your little cousin, all right, who might not be as intelligent as you are yet, right? They still have more learning to do, right? That's what intelligence is. You grow in intelligence, okay? So again, you're going to take the entire passage and put it in simple words, in simple sentences. Make sure you use complete sentences. Make sure you use correct grammar. So I know I'm not usually a big stickler on grammar because I'm a science class and not an English class, but even in science, you need to be able to communicate well. So we want to practice reading, we want to practice understanding, and we want to practice communicating in all areas of our life, not just English class. Okay, go ahead, give me an 8-ball if you understand. 8-ball if you understand. Okay, where we're going with this. Okay. Now here's the dealio. I'm going to actually do question 1 out of 4 with you. So we're going to do question 1 together. And question 1, you can take anything that I give you and you can put it in your answer. Okay, so you should get all 25 points on question number 1. Easy, because I'm going to do it with you. Okay, so question 1, it's fine for you to take anything that I give you and put it in there. Take whatever you want from what I show you. Okay, questions 2, 3, and 4, you should then be able to do on your own. Okay, so let's go ahead and take a look at this. So here's section 1. Okay, and again, best practice is that we should read it out loud. So it's going to be awkward, but I'm going to read it out loud to you. So here we go. Here's how hot water might freeze faster than cold. Properties of hydrogen bonds may explain the effect, if it even exists. Cold water should freeze faster than hot water, right? It seems logical, but some experiments have suggested that under the right conditions, hot water can freeze faster than cold. Now chemists offer a new explanation for how this might happen. What they don't do, however, is confirm that it actually does occur. The speedier freezing of hot water is known as the Mpemba effect. If it happens, it would be only under certain conditions, and those conditions would involve the bonds that link up neighboring water molecules. A team of chemists describe these potential unusual freezing properties in a paper published online December 6th in the Journal of Chemical Theory and Computation. Their paper has not, however, convinced everyone. Some skeptics argue that the effect just isn't real. All right, go ahead and give me a smiley face if you're feeling like this is making sense. Give me a frowny face if you're super confused. All right, give me a, I don't know what's in between that. Give me a cup of coffee if you're in between feeling good or confused, if you're feeling neutral. All right, so if you're feeling a little bit confused, that's totally normal. All right, that's why we do analyses, right? Sometimes this is difficult to understand. So that's why we want to practice these skills, because these skills translate to everyday life. Again, even though we're talking about science right now, you should be able to read things and analyze them and figure out what they mean in everyday life, because there's reading all around you. Okay, so let's go ahead and begin to break this down. So again, the first thing that we need to do is we need to identify 3 or more words, right? And they need to be words that are either unknown, vocab words, or words that are important to the passage. Okay? So let's go ahead, take a look at this passage and start throwing out some words to me. What are some words that I should identify here that are either unknown to you, that are class vocab words, or that are important words? Tell me in the chat box. All right, there's at least like 6 of them. 6 of them that we need to identify right now. Yes, first off, Mpemba, right? The Mpemba effect, we need to identify that. Awesome. Sorry, what else can we identify up here? I'm going to change the color of this. All right. Skeptics. Yes, skeptics is an excellent word that we should define if we don't already know it. It's also an important word. Yes, computation is an important word that you might not know or not be as familiar with. What other words do we have up here? Think about vocab words. All right, there's a lot of vocabulary that we've talked about in class too. Yeah, hydrogen. Specifically, I'm going to actually take a look at both the word hydrogen and bonds together, because we kind of know what hydrogen is and we kind of know what bonds are, but hydrogen bonds is definitely a different term. All right, it's a new term. Yes, molecules. Molecules is something we've talked about in class. What else have we talked about in class? Again, we should look for unknown words, important words, or class words. Chemists. Yes, we talked about chemists. Where is chemists? Chemists are a team of chemists. Yes. Awesome. What else? There's actually a phase change that we're talking about in here. Remember, we talked about phase changes yesterday, so that's definitely a part of our vocabulary. What is the phase change that we're looking at today? Yeah, so potential is definitely a good vocabulary word. Effects, right? All right, so hold on. There is still one word that I need that's really important. Take a look at this first paragraph, all right? Or this first sentence. What is a word that we've talked about in class? What is a word that we've talked about in class? No, the very first sentence. Very first sentence. Freeze! Yes, we need the word freeze. This is a huge word because the entire article is about freezing, right? As well as it's something that we've been learning in class, okay? So we've identified a bunch of them. Feel free to identify more of them that you want to, but these are the ones that I was kind of looking for, okay? So now we need to go ahead and start defining them. So the way that we're going to define them again is we're going to start Googling, okay? Again, this is the one time where Googling is totally fine and I want you to Google stuff. All right, so the first thing we're going to Google is hydrogen bonds, okay? So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab my Google. All right, so the first one that we're going to look for is hydrogen bonds. So hydrogen bonds, okay? Bonds, not bombs. Yeah, so this, we have a definition here. So it says a weak bond between two molecules resulting from electrostatic attraction between a proton in one molecule and an electronegativity negative atom in the other. Now, is this a simple definition? Tell me in the chat box. Is this a simple definition? Do you know every single word in this definition? If you were trying to explain it to a little cousin. No, this is not a simple definition, right? It's including a lot of words that we haven't gone over in class or that your little cousin might not understand, right? Yeah, so electrostatic, electronegative, those are more complex words. So I'm not going to use this definition. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to look for some other ones. So we can see a bunch of different ones, right? So we can see hydrogen bonding definition examples. So you can go to different websites, right? So hydrogen bonding is an interaction involving a hydrogen atom located between a pair of other atoms, having a high affinity for electrons. A bond is weaker, right? So what I'm going to take is I'm going to take the stuff I understand from here, right? So I'm going to say hydrogen bonding involves a hydrogen atom and it's a weak bond. All right, go ahead, give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Okay, so you want to simplify the definition, find simple definitions, right? So we're going to say it's a, let me grab my blue marker here. All right, we're going to say that it's a weak bond involving hydrogens. Easy peasy, right? Okay, now freezing, right? We should actually already know the definition of freezing. Tell me in the chat box, what's the definition of freezing? You don't always have to Google things, right? Some of these things you actually already know, but they're good class vocab to be familiar with. What does freezing mean? And I can still look it up, right? I can still look up the word freeze. Freeze. Right? And so we want to make sure we're looking up scientific definitions, right? So not just like someone suddenly stops moving, right? That's not the definition we're looking for. Instead, we're looking for a definition here that is like a liquid turning into ice or another solid. Go ahead, give me a thumbs up if that makes sense. Again, right? So liquid turning into a solid. That's something that we already know. Awesome. So liquid turning into a solid because it gets cold, right? It gets really cold. Perfect. The next one we want to talk about is the Mpemba effect. All right, so let's go ahead and Google Mpemba effect. Mpemba effect. And here the Mpemba effect is the process in which hot water can freeze faster than cold water, which is what our article is about. How many of you have ever actually experienced this? Have you guys ever experienced this or heard of this? So Mpemba effect is process where hot water freezes faster than cold water. Yeah, it's kind of a crazy effect. You might not have experienced it before, but this does happen, okay? So it says then, right, we talked about molecules. We actually defined molecules in class, right? So molecules in class we defined as when two or more atoms are bonded together. Okay, team of chemists we also defined in class, right? Chemists we defined as someone who studies chemistry. Define potential, right? So potential, let's go ahead and look that one up. So coming over here, we're going to look up the word potential. Yeah, throwing hot water into freezing air outside is pretty fun, right? So potential, going to look up the word potential. Right? So again, potential doesn't necessarily mean the same thing depending on what like you're looking at. So in this case, right, we're looking at potential unusual freezing properties, right? So potential in this case means like the capacity to develop into something, right? So potentially because of something, the chance or possibility of something becoming real, right? So coming over here, potential, unusual, freezing, right? So possible, another word for possible. All right, computation. I can look that one up. This one is not as important to the article, but it is the name of the journal where this article was located, right? So computation just means a mathematical calculation, right? So when it talks about this article, this journal, it's the Journal of like Chemical Theory, so chemistry, as well as computation, so math, how we're actually calculating stuff. So calculations, that's another word for computation. And then last but not least, skeptics. All right, how are we feeling about this so far in the chat box? How are you feeling about getting these definitions? Again, we can copy these, but we're looking for simple definitions. Simple definitions. Perfect. All right, so skeptic means a person inclined to question or doubt accepted opinions. So skeptic means that they're not sure about it, right? So in this case, we can go ahead and say skeptics means they doubt it. They are, they doubt this or are unsure. Okay? Cool. All right. So these are all of the definitions or words that you can use for this first part. So choose 3 of those words. Again, prioritize unknown ones and then include their definitions. And the definitions, again, you can copy from Google. You can copy from what's up here. Now, next, what we need to do is we need to identify main points. So taking a look here, right, main points mean really important information that we want to take from this paragraph. And so for this, sorry, let me check my color here. I want to use red. All right, so let me grab red. Okay, so important points here that I can see are things like the speedier freezing of hot water is known as the Mpemba effect. Right, we would say under the right conditions, hot water can freeze faster than cold. And then maybe that some skeptics argue that this just isn't real. Okay, go ahead, give me a thumbs up if that makes sense why I chose those. Perfect. And again, you can copy these main points directly into this answer, right? So you can copy the main points directly as you see them, the important points. Okay, so you're going to copy down under the right conditions, hot water can freeze faster than cold. Speedier freezing of hot water is known as Mpemba effect. And some skeptics argue that the effect just isn't real. Now we can go ahead and actually make our summary. So I'm going to go ahead, grab my green tool right here, and we're going to go ahead and actually make our summary. So again, the summary needs to be 1 to 2 complete sentences as if you were explaining it to a little cousin in your own words with correct grammar. So I'm going to go ahead and summarize this and say, like, taking all of this information together, that sometimes hot water freezes faster than cold water. And this is called the Mpemba effect. Mpemba effect. Scientists don't know exactly why this happens, but there is a new idea that it has to do with hydrogen bonds, which are weak bonds. All right, go ahead, give me a thumbs up if you understand. Like, this took everything that we looked here, give me green checks if you feel good about this. This took everything here. It took all of our definitions, it took all of our main points, and we put it into simple terms that we could explain to our little cousin. Excellent. All right, guys. So this is the answer to number 1. I need you to take a picture of this, and you can copy anything that's up here. You can include more information if you want, but you have 30 seconds to go ahead and get a picture of this and give me a green check. So again, the blue ones are words and definitions that you can copy. The red ones are the main points that you can copy, the important points that you can copy, and the summary is the explanation that you can also copy. Yes, Antonio, you can copy everything that's on the slide for number 1. So, green checks, everyone. If you got a picture of this, again, you can copy anything and everything for number 1. For number 1, you can copy anything and everything for this from this slide. All right, awesome. Waiting on green checks from Alyssa, Amanda, Kayla, Christian, Trey. Green checks, please. Erwin, Ethan, Ivy, and waiting on Jacob, Jackie, Kai, Kayla, Kier, Lolo. Green checks, MJ. Michael E., Paulina, Racy, Sarah, Tatiana, Trent, green checks. Yay! Awesome. So again, this is the answer to number 1. You should automatically get a 25 points, and then the rest of them you should be able to do on your own. Okay? So go ahead, tell me in the chat box, do you guys feel like you can do numbers 2, 3, and 4 on your own based on what we did together? Do you feel like you are comfortable with doing that? Awesome. All right. If you guys need help, remember I do have another support session on Monday, so you can absolutely come on Monday. However, I will be entering zeros over the weekend. So again, it's technically due at 4. I won't enter zeros until the weekend though, so you do have some time to get it done. Make sure try to get it done today though. That way you don't have to worry about it anymore. All right. So let me go ahead and stop our recording here.